What if the oldest myths weren't just tales for campfires or bedtime stories, but echoes of a reality we've forgotten? Think about it. Nearly every ancient culture, from the Sumerians to the Greeks, from the Maya to the Aboriginal Australians, tells of a great flood, a deluge that wiped out not just cities, but entire ways of life. These stories don't just resemble each other, they mirror each other across oceans and millennia. How could so many civilizations, separated by language, distance, and belief, converge on the same event? Could it be that these myths are not metaphors, but memory? This video explores a question most historians refuse to touch. What came before the flood? Was there an era of knowledge and power so advanced, so foreign to us, that it now reads like fantasy? We're going beyond dusty scrolls and sacred texts. We're following the trail of physical evidence. Megaliths, forbidden tablets, lost symbols, and engineering feats that defy explanation even with today's tools. And for those who think this is just ancient fiction, consider this: we're standing at a crossroads. In a world dominated by artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and space exploration, perhaps we're not leaping forward but circling back. What if we're rediscovering knowledge that once lit the earth and was lost beneath water and war? To those in the US who remember the space race, the Apollo missions, or the discovery of the Titanic, imagine learning that the real mysteries were never in space or under the ocean, but buried in stone right beneath our feet. For a generation raised to believe in science, this journey will challenge the very definition of progress. This isn't just about Sumerian kings or mythical pyramids. It's about whether history as we know it is a half-told story, and whether the truth has been lost or hidden. So stay with us all the way to the end, because the last theory we'll explore isn't just bizarre. It's something even archaeologists refuse to speak about publicly. Subscribe now and unlock the story of a world that may have existed before ours even began. The ancient civilization of Sumer, in what is now modern-day Iraq, is often called the cradle of human history. Where writing was born, where cities first rose, and where the earliest laws and organized societies appeared. But hidden within their records is something that challenges everything we think we know about history. One artifact in particular stands out: the Sumerian king list. On its surface, it looks like a chronological account of rulers and their reigns, like any historical record. But look closer, and something bizarre emerges. According to the tablet, the earliest Sumerian kings reigned not for decades or even centuries, but for tens of thousands of years. One king is said to have ruled for 28,800 years, another for 36,000. In total, 8 kings ruled for a combined 241,200 years before a great flood swept over the land. To scholars, this raises a difficult question. Was this poetic symbolism, a political myth, or was it a distorted memory of something real, something we've chosen to file away as impossible? Enter the Anunnaki, a term that appears again and again in Sumerian mythology. These were the sky gods, said to have descended from the heavens to shape and guide humanity. They weren't just deities in the abstract, they were described in physical terms, interacting with humans, imparting knowledge, and even ruling over city-states. Some ancient astronaut theorists believe the Anunnaki were extraterrestrials, visitors from another world, whose advanced presence gave rise to civilization itself. While that might sound far-fetched, consider this: these stories emerge from the earliest written records of any known culture. Long before the Bible, long before the pyramids, the Sumerians were writing about gods who came down from the sky and rulers who lived for thousands of years. And they did so with incredible detail: names, cities, timelines, all preserved in cuneiform tablets now stored in museums around the world. Now let's cross-reference that with another ancient text, the Book of Enoch, excluded from the Bible but revered in early Jewish and Christian traditions. It tells of the Watchers, a group of angels who descended to earth, taught humanity forbidden knowledge, and fathered a hybrid race of giants. When they defied divine law, a global flood was sent to wipe out their creations. Sound familiar? In the Sumerian version, there's 𝐔𝐬𝐬𝐿, the king warned by the gods to build a great boat to survive the flood. In the Bible, he's known as Noah. The parallels are undeniable. Two separate civilizations, two stories of divine beings, hybrid offspring, and an earth-cleansing flood. One preserved on clay tablets, the other in scripture. But there's more. Researchers and former museum insiders have hinted that not all Sumerian tablets are on display. Some are in restricted archives, sealed away, untranslated, or labeled non-essential. Why? What could they contain? And who decides what history the public is allowed to see? One whistleblower claimed that tablets describing the Anunnaki in shockingly specific detail were quietly relocated from Iraq to undisclosed Western facilities during wartime. Another archaeologist alleged that translations of certain cuneiform texts were delayed indefinitely due to their contents clashing with accepted historical timelines. It begs the question, are we hiding ancient history because it's inconvenient, or because it's dangerous? What if the Anunnaki weren't gods or metaphors, but an advanced species that predated us? What if the long-reigning Sumerian kings weren't exaggerated legends, but actual beings whose existence challenges the very notion of human evolution? Of course, skeptics argue these ideas stretch logic. They say ancient people often used myth to convey moral lessons, that numbers in the Sumerian king list were symbolic, not literal, that the Anunnaki were spiritual archetypes, not real entities. And they may be right, but then again, why do these same stories echo across civilizations that never had contact? Why do flood myths, sky gods, hybrid beings, and sudden disappearances appear in the histories of the Maya, Hopi, Chinese, Hindu, and Norse? And why do some of the most secretive institutions in the world seem strangely uninterested in investigating these ancient anomalies further? Perhaps we've been asking the wrong question. Instead of, were these kings real? We should be asking, if they were, where did they go? And more disturbingly, are they coming back? Pyramids rise like sentinels from the sands, jungles, and mountains of the earth. Monuments that transcend time, culture, and geography. From the iconic Great Pyramid of Giza to the mysterious step temples of Teotihuacan in Mexico, and even the little-known forest-covered pyramids of China's Xi'an province, these structures weren't isolated marvels, they were part of a global architectural phenomenon. But there's something else they share: astronomical precision. The pyramids at Giza are aligned almost perfectly with true north, so accurately, in fact, that modern compasses can't beat them. The layout of Teotihuacan mirrors the positions of planets in the solar system. And China's White Pyramid, kept largely hidden by the Chinese government, has similar alignment with constellations observed in ancient times. These are not coincidences. Across continents, separated by oceans and thousands of years, ancient builders seemed obsessed with the heavens. Why? Was it religion or something more technical? Let's look at the materials. Egypt's granite blocks, some weighing up to 80 tons, were quarried hundreds of miles away and transported without wheels or cranes. Some stones show signs of machining, perfect circular drill holes, mirror-smooth finishes, and corners cut with the kind of precision modern tools struggle to match. There are even samples of vitrified stone, rock melted under extreme heat, then cooled rapidly, forming a glassy surface. These aren't the marks of primitive hand tools. They're technological signatures. And here's where things get stranger. In the 1890s, Nikola Tesla, the brilliant inventor of alternating current and wireless power, became fascinated with ancient structures, especially the pyramids. He believed they were energy transmitters, not tombs. Tesla's own tower at Wardenclyffe, designed to send wireless electricity around the globe, was modeled on principles he believed were hidden in ancient texts. He once claimed, "The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in 1 decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence." Could Tesla have rediscovered something already known long ago? Let's zoom in on Dendra, Egypt. Deep within the Temple of Hathor lies a strange carving, what appears to be a large light bulb, complete with a filament and power source. Known as the dendrolite, it's been dismissed by Egyptologists as a symbolic representation. But electrical engineers have recreated the device, and guess what? Works. How did people 2,000 years ago carve a modern-looking electrical device into stone, unless they'd seen or used something like it? The temple also contains records referring to Thoth, the Egyptian god of wisdom, writing, and measurement. Thoth is described not as a mythical being, but as a real ruler of a pre-flood Egypt. He was said to have stored his knowledge in hidden scrolls, texts that only the worthy could find. Some say these scrolls became the basis of the Emerald Tablets, which describe lost sciences and cosmic laws. What if Thoth was not a god, but a survivor of an earlier civilization? And what if these temples and pyramids weren't religious centers at all, but energy hubs, tapping into natural earth currents? The Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan contains mica, a rare and electrically insulating mineral, sandwiched in its inner chambers. Mica isn't found nearby. It was transported from thousands of miles away in Brazil. Why would ancient builders go to such lengths unless the material served a highly specific function? Similar theories surround the Bosnian pyramids, where researchers have recorded unusual energy emissions from the apex of the structures, measurable frequencies that suggest energy transmission. Even more telling, many pyramids are built over underground aquifers, just like Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower. Flowing water, under the right conditions, can generate piezoelectric energy when it interacts with certain types of stone, such as granite or limestone, materials used heavily in pyramid construction. Was this a form of geoenergy engineering, masked by millennia of misinterpretation? Of course, mainstream archaeology dismisses these ideas. The consensus remains: pyramids were tombs built with rudimentary tools by thousands of laborers over decades. Yet, no mummies have ever been found in the Great Pyramid. No inscriptions, no funerary markings, nothing to suggest it was ever a tomb. And what of the legends that these were pre-flood monuments? The ancient Egyptian priest Manetho wrote that the gods ruled for thousands of years before the first dynasty. Some pyramid texts suggest that Zep-Tepi, the first time, was a golden age when divine beings walked the earth. Many cultures speak of a time before a great deluge when knowledge was vast, and the earth was more connected. The Maya, the Hindus, even the Dogon tribe of Mali all preserve versions of this story. Could it be that the pyramids were built not just for humans, but by or with the help of a civilization far more advanced than we assume? A civilization that used frequency, vibration, and geometry to harness the planet's energy until a cataclysm wiped it out. Perhaps the pyramids weren't just meant to endure the past, but to survive into our future, to remind us, or to reactivate should we reach the same understanding again. The question is, are we ready? Or will we dismiss these structures as primitive relics until they rise again with a power we no longer comprehend? Across ancient myth and modern conspiracy, a chilling image keeps resurfacing, a dark, thick substance described alternately as sacred, alive, or even aware. Some call it black goo. Others refer to it in older terms: living clay, prima materia, or the blood of the earth. And depending on who you ask, it's either the essence of creation or a remnant of something lost, buried beneath cataclysm and time. The idea of a life-generating material is not new. In Sumerian myth, the gods created humans by mixing their own divine essence with clay from the earth. This wasn't just mud. It was a sacred material, animated through divine instruction, carrying with it the DNA of the gods. Similarly, in the Vedic texts of India, there are tales of a black, cosmic substance linked with the creation of life and consciousness. Sometimes it takes the form of soma, mystical fluid drunk by the gods. Other times it is referenced more ambiguously as a dark matter imbued with knowledge and power. In ancient Egypt, too, we find references to sacred materials connected with transformation and resurrection. The Ka, the life force of a person, was believed to interact with certain sacred black stones during burial rituals. These materials weren't just symbolic. They were thought to carry the energy of the divine. Fast forward to modern times, and you'll find that fringe scientists and theorists have revived these stories under a new term, black goo. They describe it as a sentient, biointelligent substance found in deep geological layers or certain hot zones around the planet, places historically tied to supernatural activity or energetic anomalies. Some claim that black goo has been encountered during deep-sea or deep-earth explorations, where it behaves in ways that defy chemical expectations. There are even accounts, highly disputed of course, from military whistleblowers describing interactions with a dark, oil-like substance that appeared to respond to emotion or intention. Was this simply myth colliding with imagination? Or is it possible that remnants of an ancient non-human intelligence are embedded deep within our planet? This concept intersects with religious symbolism in compelling ways. The Kaaba in Mecca houses a revered black stone said by tradition to have fallen from the heavens. Pilgrims touch or kiss the stone, believing it absorbs sin and radiates blessing. Some interpret it as meteoric, others as symbolic. But could it be a vestige of an ancient technology or cosmic event misunderstood by modern science? The same is said of black altars found across megalithic sites, from Göbekli Tepe to Mesoamerican temples, stones that appear to have been used in high ritual contexts, often connected to blood, stars, and resurrection. Why black? Why this specific form and color? Symbolically, black absorbs. It is the void, the place of unknowing, but also the potential for creation. In alchemy, the nigredo stage is where matter is broken down, disassembled, before being reborn. In this way, black goo is both an origin and a warning. It is the primordial sludge from which life emerged, but also something that perhaps was wounded or dormant after the cataclysm that reshaped the earth. If the Great Flood, described in dozens of cultural records, was not just a literal deluge but an energetic or planetary reset, then it's worth asking, was something buried intentionally? Could black goo, or what it represents, have once flowed more freely, in nature, in ritual, in consciousness, only to be sealed away when it was misused or became unstable? Some fringe researchers propose that Atlantis, before its fall, was powered by biotechnologies far beyond what we understand, merging consciousness with material systems. In this view, black goo might have been an interface, a medium that could store, transmit, or even create thought and life. A kind of organic quantum computer built into the Earth itself. Of course, this is speculative, bordering on sci-fi, but the pattern is hard to ignore. Myths across continents speak of dark fluids, serpent energies, sacred clays, or stones that could speak. Indigenous traditions, too, refer to parts of the earth that are alive, with pulses, voices, and moods. Are these just metaphors? Or have we, in our industrial arrogance, forgotten that the earth might once have been more alive than we assume? Here's a more grounded angle: oil. Modern society runs on black goo of a different kind, petroleum fossilized, remains of past ecosystems. But what if this dead resource is a shadow of something once living in a different sense? Our dependence on it, our wars over it, our rituals around its extraction, they mirror something older, deeper. Have we replaced sacred interaction with exploitation? And what if black goo, in any of its forms, was part of a forbidden science? A science that worked with Earth, rather than against it, one that allowed the ancient world to heal, grow, and build on a scale we still can't replicate. Many modern thinkers propose that the true danger isn't that we never had this knowledge, it's that we did. And we lost it, or worse, that someone made sure we would. The flood stories across cultures don't just speak of destruction. They speak of sealing, of covering, of deliberately hiding the past so it would not rise again. What was drowned with Atlantis, with Lemuria, with the pre-dynastic kingdoms of Egypt? Could it be a living technology? One that merged spirit, matter, and memory? And if so, is the black goo or its myth trying to return? Next time you see a sacred stone, a forgotten myth of a clay-born god, or even a dark shimmer in the depths of the earth, ask yourself, is the planet trying to speak again? And are we ready to listen? Across continents and separated by oceans, there exist structures so colossal, so precisely constructed, that even today's engineers admit we couldn't build them easily, if at all. These are the Cyclopean cities, named for the mythical Cyclopes of Greek lore, giants said to have built with boulders as if they were bricks. But these structures are not just myths, they are real, towering, impossibly ancient, and strangely, many are found in areas once believed to be untouched by civilization during their supposed construction. Let's begin with Baalbek, Lebanon. There, within the Temple of Jupiter, lie the largest known hewn stones in the world. The stone of the pregnant woman, for instance, weighs over 1,000 tons. That's more than 2 fully loaded Boeing 747s. These stones weren't just quarried, they were moved into position with a level of precision that baffles engineers today. Laser scans have shown near-perfect alignment. No modern crane can lift these weights, and no ancient tool we found could have cut and shaped them this precisely. Even stranger, the Roman temple built atop the megaliths is less advanced. So we have a case where the foundations are more complex than the building itself. Did the Romans inherit these stones? Or were they built by a civilization that came and vanished long before recorded history? Move across the globe to Peru, and we find 𝐔𝐧𝐜𝐡𝐚𝐫𝐭𝐞𝐝, a fortress overlooking Cusco. Here, walls are made of multi-ton stones, some shaped with up to 12 interlocking angles, fitted so tightly that not even a razor blade can slide between them. There is no mortar, and yet the walls have survived centuries of earthquakes and weather. Look closely and you'll find something else. Tool marks, but not from chisels or Bronze Age hammers. Some cuts appear melted, as if the stone had been softened or carved with unknown technology. The shapes are so organic, so precise that many believe this could not have been done without high-heat tools or something more advanced. Something lost. Then there's Gunung Padang in Indonesia, only recently excavated using ground-penetrating radar. This hill, long thought to be a natural formation, is now believed to be a multi-layered pyramid older than Göbekli Tepe. Radiocarbon dating has suggested layers as far back as 20,000 years ago. If that's true, it would rewrite the entire timeline of civilization. The site itself is built with massive basalt columns, placed, aligned, and stacked in ways that suggest not just symbolism, but a purpose, a message, a warning, which brings us to the oral traditions. In every one of these locations, stories survive, handed down for generations, that speak of beings before the flood, of giants or gods who built these places in preparation for a cataclysm. At Sacsayhuaman, the Inca told Spanish conquistadors that the walls were not built by them, but by a race who came long before. In Baalbek, local legends say the stones were laid by the giants of antiquity, using lost technologies brought from the heavens. The builders knew something was coming, a deluge, a fire from the sky, a shaking of the earth. And so they built, not for comfort or status, but for survival. Think about that. If we today suspected a planet-wide catastrophe, flood, pole shift, cosmic impact, what kind of structures would we leave behind to endure it? Stone, not steel, not glass, something that could weather 10,000 years of rain and wind. And that might be exactly what these sites are. Not temples, not fortresses, but beacons, shelters, anchors of memory meant to say, we were here, we knew, and we tried to warn you. Let's talk theory. Some say it was the Atlanteans, a high civilization spoken of by Plato, who mastered engineering, energy, and consciousness, and who built across the world before falling to the flood. Others suggest it was giants, not myth, but real beings whose size and strength allowed them to shape stones we can't move today. There's even a third group who believe we did it, or rather humans did, in a forgotten era of advancement, and that the flood wasn't just a literal one, but a metaphorical reset, a veil drawn across our collective memory. Consider this: if an advanced human society existed before 10,000 BCE, what would be left of it today? Not cities, not books, only stone. And not just any stone, the kind that weighs hundreds of tons, placed with a precision that says, this wasn't primitive. Even more compelling is the global pattern. Why do we find megalithic ruins in Peru, Egypt, Turkey, Indonesia, Japan, and even the Arctic? Why do so many of them sit on ley lines, align with solstices and mirror constellations? Who had the knowledge to do this, and the reason? Could it be that these Cyclopean cities weren't just shelters, but repositories containing encoded information in geometry and alignment? Some researchers suggest these structures were part of an ancient geodetic network, possibly even tied to a planetary energy grid, a system we don't understand today, but which once stabilized, energized, or even connected key points on the Earth. And if these structures were built with that kind of intention, to endure, to warn, to inform, then the most important question we must ask is, what were they trying to tell us? Was it a warning of a coming flood? A cycle of destruction tied to astronomical events? Were they marking safe zones, places to return to when the disaster passed? Or were they simply saying, we were here, you are not the first, and you will not be the last? In the ruins of Baalbek, among the terraces of Gunung Padang, and the walls of 𝐔𝐧𝐜𝐴, the stones speak. If only we'd learn how to listen. And perhaps the greatest mystery is not how they were built, but why they've been forgotten. Because if we forget these impossible structures, we also forget the possibility that our future might look like their past, one cataclysm away from having to start over. So next time you pass a crumbling ruin, remember this: some monuments weren't made for worship. They were made to survive. Serpents. They slither through nearly every ancient story, engraved into temple walls, whispered about in religious texts, coiled around staffs of healing and wisdom. And while today we might think of snakes as mere reptiles or symbols of deception, the ancients didn't see them that way, not entirely. To many early civilizations, serpent beings were divine, powerful, and strangely familiar. Across the globe, from the lush jungles of India to the sacred pyramids of Mesoamerica, stories persist of serpent gods, not as symbols but as real, intelligent entities who walked alongside early humanity. In India, the Nagas are still revered. Described as half-human, half-serpent, these beings lived underground in vast palaces said to rival any human kingdom. Some were benevolent, teaching wisdom and guarding sacred waters. Others were vengeful, unleashing floods or destruction when wronged. Yet the Nagas weren't considered mythological in the way we think of fantasy. They were embedded into real-world geography. Lakes, rivers, and caves are still named for them. Were they simply symbolic, or a memory of something literal? In Mesoamerica, the feathered serpent god 𝐔𝐧𝐜𝐴TL was worshipped as a creator, a bringer of knowledge, science, and astronomy. Often depicted descending from the heavens or emerging from caves, he wasn't feared. He was venerated. His name itself means precious serpent or plumed serpent, and he was considered the god who taught man to be civilized. But curiously, 𝐔𝐧𝐜𝐴TL was also said to vanish into the sky, promising to return again. The same themes echo across distant continents: serpentine teachers, cosmic origins, and a mysterious disappearance. Even in Sumer, we find the god Enki, the bringer of life and knowledge, often associated with flowing water and symbolized by serpents. He was said to have warned 𝐷𝐼𝐸𝐴 of the coming flood, enabling humanity to survive. Like 𝐔𝐧𝐜𝐴TL and the Nagas, Enki wasn't malevolent, he was a protector. And his image, like so many others, merged the animal and divine. Then there's the serpent in Eden, perhaps the most misunderstood symbol in Western theology. Traditionally, seen as a deceiver, this figure offers Adam and Eve forbidden knowledge, the fruit of awareness. But in some interpretations, the serpent is not the villain. It's the awakener, the one who elevates humans from ignorance. Promethean figure punished for empowering mankind, which begs the question, were serpent beings once honored and only later demonized? This leads us to a darker, deeper theory, one echoed in mystery schools and conspiracy circles alike: the reptilian legacy. What if these serpent gods weren't symbolic, but an ancient, intelligent species, one not entirely human, perhaps amphibious or reptilian, who existed before the flood and played a critical role in shaping early civilization? Some believe that as the Earth faced cataclysm, the Great Flood, pole shifts, or celestial impacts, these beings retreated underground. This gives rise to the 𝐔𝐽𝐻 legends, tales of inner Earth civilizations, advanced and hidden, watching humanity from below. Cultures as far apart as the Tibetans, Hopi, and Norse all speak of beings who live beneath mountains, inside the earth, or behind sealed doors under sacred sites. Could the serpent gods have survived there? Consider the persistent symbolism: the staff of Hermes, the rod of Asclepius, and the caduceus. All symbols tied to medicine and healing feature coiled serpents. Why would ancient healers and today's medical profession still use imagery rooted in serpents unless there was a deeper meaning? The serpent wasn't just a creature. It was a symbol of life force, transformation, and renewal. And not just in medicine, in royalty too. Egyptian pharaohs wore uraeus, the rearing cobra, on their crowns, symbolizing divine authority and protection. In Chinese myth, the dragon, often a serpentine being, embodies wisdom and power. In esoteric societies and secret orders, serpents often represent hidden knowledge, transformation, and the gateway to higher awareness. So what happened? Did these beings perish in the flood, like the lost cities and vanished civilizations? Or did they go into hiding? Some fringe theories suggest they never left, that perhaps over millennia they adapted genetically or technologically and continued to influence human affairs from the shadows. Could the persistent stories of shape-shifting reptilians, seen in modern conspiracy lore, be distorted echoes of ancient truths? Certainly, this theory has its critics. Mainstream archaeology and science classify these stories as myths, symbolic expressions of early humanity's fears and hopes. But the consistency across time, geography, and culture is difficult to ignore. Why do ancient peoples from opposite sides of the world, who never met, all tell of serpent teachers, underground civilizations, and a great flood that wiped them away? And here's where it becomes even more unsettling. What if these beings didn't simply vanish, but were erased, demonized, rewritten, cast as villains, snakes in a garden, dragons to be slain, when once they were our guides? If you wanted to bury a truth, especially one that contradicted rising theocracies and centralized human authority, wouldn't you start by twisting the story? Take the being who gave knowledge and call him evil. Maybe that's why the serpent became Satan, the dragon became the devil, and the underground became a place of punishment rather than refuge. What if our entire mythological framework is built on misinterpretation? And finally, ask yourself, what happened to the serpents? Were they annihilated in the flood? Did they retreat to inner earth cities like Shambhala or Padala? Or, and this is the theory some whisper but few explore, did we become them? Were early humans altered, taught, or even merged with these beings to become what we are today? In the end, the serpent's legacy is written not just in stone, but in our DNA, our symbols, our stories, and perhaps in the very evolution of our species. As we dig deeper into the past, one thing becomes clear: the serpent never truly disappeared. It just shed its skin. Across continents and cultures, across languages long forgotten and ruins buried deep beneath jungle and ocean, 5 mysteries endure. From the towering pyramids of Egypt and China to strange black stones shrouded in legend. From gods that came from the stars to kings who ruled before time was counted. These stories have survived not because they were explained, but because they defy explanation. In this episode, we've journeyed through the impossible. We began in ancient Sumer, where the Anunnaki and the pre-flood kings reigned for tens of thousands of years. A timeline that breaks the spine of modern history. We followed their trail through forbidden texts and hidden tablets, wondering whether these were divine beings or a race that predates our own. Then we uncovered the global pyramid code, from Giza to Teotihuacan, from China's Forbidden Hills to Tesla's lost blueprints. These were not just tombs, but machines, resonating with sound, aligned with stars, some of them still unexplained by our most advanced tools. Could they have been designed to harness energy, protect knowledge, or signal something or someone? In the sky, we entered the shadow of the black goo, the living clay found in mythology and occult science alike. Called prima materia, or the first material, it shows up again and again as a life-forming substance, a conscious element that some say predated man or perhaps birthed him. We asked, could Earth itself have once been alive in a way we no longer understand? In the realm of Cyclopean cities, we walked along the foundations of Baalbek, Sacsayhuaman, and Gunung. Padang, cities so old, their builders are unknown. So advanced, we can't replicate their precision. And so mysterious, some believe they were constructed not to worship, but to survive. Monuments built by those who knew something terrible was coming. And finally, we shed the skin of myth to confront the reptilian legacy, serpent gods of India, Mesoamerica, and the ancient Near East. Were they just symbols, or memories of a race wiped out or hiding beneath us before the flood? Each chapter different, each origin story rooted in distant soil. Yet all five point to the same quiet truth. There was something before us, not just primitive humans, but advanced knowledge, lost sciences, spiritual wisdom, and technologies that echo in stone and myth. A civilization, or maybe many, that flourished in the shadows of deep time and vanished when the flood came. But here's the part that no textbook dares to ask. Was the flood the end, or just the reset button? It's a question that rattles every hallway of accepted history. What if we're not the beginning of civilization, but merely the most recent page? And worse, what if we're not even the most advanced one? What we call myth may be fractured memory. What we label as superstition may be sanitized truth. And what we take for granted, that our world began 5,000 years ago with writing and will, might be the epilogue to a far older story. Now, take a moment to ask yourself, are we the first intelligent species to walk this earth? Or the last survivors of something so profound, so extraordinary that it had to be erased? Because maybe, just maybe, the ones who came before didn't vanish. Maybe they went underground. Maybe they ascended. Or maybe they left behind signs, megaliths, myths, metals, maps, waiting for the right minds to awaken. You're here. That means you're one of them, one of the seekers, one of the few asking the right questions. So let me ask you one more. What if the ones who vanished are the ones who return? If that thought keeps you up tonight, then you're ready for what comes next. Like this video if you felt the echoes of something deeper. Comment your theory. What mystery captivated you most? Subscribe for more journeys into the forgotten and forbidden. And explore the full Lost Civilizations playlist, right here on Uncharted Mysteries by NUN, where the past isn't dead. It's waiting, because when the flood comes again, it won't be water that buries us.